I had the opportunity to go to the Capitol and speak with House Democrats on the night of Donald Trump's address to the joint session of Congress. And one thing that was clear is Democrats are fighting back. They are doing their jobs to try to protect their constituents from this awful and dangerous Trump administration. But unlike those two people at the top of the Trump administration, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, Democrats, like I said, are working. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they are not. They are golfing, they are skiing, they are tweeting, they are letting Elon Musk, their co-president, take things over. And it's the reason this has all been such an absolute mess. And that is exactly what one of the Democrats that I talked to, Congressman Jim McGovern, had to say in a brutal call out of Donald Trump that we're going to get into. But before we do, if I can quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way. And it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into our conversation, let's check out what Jim McGovern had to say right here.
Just look at what is happening. DOJ sacked hundreds of workers who keep our nuclear weapons safe, then scrambled to rehire those workers when they realized they screwed up. They fired critical staff from VA hospitals, including disabled veterans. They decimated the NIH office responsible for groundbreaking research on Alzheimer's and dementia. They dismantled Ebola prevention teams along with other critical disease surveillance programs, despite there being a nationwide measles outbreak for the first time in decades. They cut experts working on the bird flu response, you know, the thing that is making eggs so expensive and causing shortages. And now they are working to try to hire them back. I mean, talk about efficiency. We have wildfires raging in South Carolina as Elon guts FEMA. Trump golfs in Florida, and J.D. Vance hits the slopes in Vermont. Can you imagine if Joe Biden went golfing during the California fires? You guys would have a meltdown. But when it's the dear leader, Donald Trump, suddenly it's all fine. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the disgraceful spectacle in the Oval Office last week. You know, I just got home from meeting with my constituents in a town hall, and what I call Coffee with Your Congressman in Leominster, Massachusetts. It isn't exactly a Democratic stronghold. Normally, I get about 30 or 40 people show up. This week, we had well over 300 people show up. And the people who showed up were overwhelmingly disgusted, embarrassed, and angry over what transpired at the White House on Friday between President Trump and President Zelensky. I watched the entire video. Not once did Trump or J.D. Vance say a single negative thing about Vladimir Putin. Not a single bad word for the bloodthirsty dictator who invaded Ukraine. Not a single word of support for our allies in Ukraine who are just fighting against Russian aggression. And it seems like people need a little bit of a history lesson. You know, when the Soviet Union fell in the late 90s, Ukraine was left with the world's third largest stockpile of nuclear weapons on the planet. In turn, they signed an agreement with us, the United Kingdom, and Russia, in which they agreed to give up all those weapons if we, the other three signers, agreed to uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. So Ukraine and Russia already had a peace agreement. Russia violated it. Russia invaded Ukraine, and the fastest way for this war to end is for Russia to stop the invasion. We, the United States, we also signed that agreement. We promised to help protect Ukraine's freedom. And Trump is not living up to that agreement. So long as Trump backtracks, no one is going to trust our word. And that's exactly what Russia wants. Just after the meeting, the Kremlin spokesman said, and I quote, "The new U.S. administration is rapidly changing all foreign policy configurations. This largely coincides with our vision," end quote. Do you know what that sounds like? It sounds like our national leaders are in the pockets of the Russian government. It sounds like Trump and Vance are playing right into Putin's hands, undermining our allies and aligning with our adversaries. In fact, just for the sake of argument, let's say we had a president who was doing Putin's bidding, who was secretly trying to undermine the United States, and that president wanted to destroy us from within. You know what they would probably do? Well, they would dismantle our professional civil service. They would withdraw from the world and threaten to leave NATO. They would shut down foreign aid. They would turn their backs on our allies and embrace our adversaries. And they might They might weaken our ability to fight off Russian cyber operations against U.S. critical infrastructure. Do those things sound familiar? Because I think they do. And let's be clear, everything I have mentioned, dismantling regulations, destroying institutions, abandoning our global commitments, makes Americans less safe, not more. And let me make one more thing clear. Republicans own this. You control the House, you control the Senate, and you control the White House. We do not live in a dictatorship. You could stand up to this stuff, but you don't. You could provide oversight on the very real, very massive scandals happening right now, but you won't. You could pass real policies to bring down the cost of food, stop the egg shortage, help middle-class families, and protect this country, but you're not. Instead, you're stealing from the middle class to enrich billionaires, trying to overturn Biden-era rules no one has ever even heard of, and offering the Western world on a platter to dictators. So, well, we're not going to stand by while extremists dismantle our government and hurt everyday Americans. The Republican agenda comes at the expense of the people we were all elected to serve. Enough is enough.
If you want to look at the waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, look at Donald Trump's vacations, going to UFC fights, going to the Daytona 500, going to the Super Bowl. Those things cost us money. Donald Trump has spent about $20 million taxpayer dollars already on his golf trips. And you know where those millions of dollars are going? To Donald Trump's golf courses, to the clubs. He's putting money in his pocket every time he can, every chance he can get through the government. And I guess that's why him and Elon are such great friends, because they both understand, or maybe not understand, but believe it to be their piggy bank, not something set up to protect the citizens of, the country that elected that government. But they have a broken understanding of this, and that's something that I talked about in my conversation with Jim McGovern that we're going to check out right here.
Congressman, we know that Elon Musk is tweeting about 1,800 times a day now, and he's happy to talk about how proud he is to be cutting Social Security, how proud he is to want to cut Medicaid along with Republicans in the House. But he's too afraid to come before Congress and be confronted about that. If you could speak directly to Elon Musk, what would it be that you would say to him?
Have you ever visited a supermarket? Have you ever talked to anybody on Snap? Do you know what it's like to not be able to afford your rent at the end of a month? Do you have any clue what real people are going through? And do you have any decency in terms of how you're approaching your supposed job, where you're just laying people off, public servants who do incredibly good things to help people, and with no humanity, with no decency, you're just laying them off. What a cruel and rotten thing to do. I'd say, how do you live with yourself?
And then they really seem to not care. And one of the lies that we have to talk about and call out the most is that Elon Musk is a volunteer. He's there because he's happily helping America become this better country by getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. We know it's not the case. Elon is there to enrich himself. But how do we very specifically deliver that message to people who aren't necessarily hearing about politics all the time?
Well, I think the message is starting to get out, because in the first 2 months, Trump and Musk have created, have been responsible for chaos, corruption, and rising costs. And I mean, everywhere I go now, people are telling me they either have someone in their family, or they know somebody who's been laid off, or they're worried about, are they get their Social Security check on time? I mean, my guess tonight, son has a disability. She relies heavily on Medicaid, is wondering whether or not Medicaid will be there to be able to make sure that her son's health care needs are met. So it's beginning to sink in. Look, I mean, Democrats, one of these we need to do, and we're going to start to do, is do shadow hearings. I mean, we don't control the House or the Senate, so we can't schedule hearings. Well, we can schedule our own hearings and bring people who are adversely impacted to the forefront, and help get the word out, what this administration is all about. I mean, it is cruel. I mean, they're doubling down on the cruelty, and I've never quite seen anything like this ever.
Yeah, and although we may not have the power to do everything we want to combat it, using our voices is the best thing we can, making a scene, having viral moments. You are doing that. You have been one of my favorite communicators. You're bringing the heat. You are making people feel like there is someone fighting for them. And it really means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Well, look, I came to Congress to help people, and government and public service is not about making profits. It's about helping people. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have never done one day of public service in their life. And people I care about are being hurt. And so I'm going to fight like hell on their behalf. And but I appreciate you amplifying some of these messages. We got to get the word out.
Absolutely, we do.
Thank you.
I said it in that little interview that Jim McGovern and I had, and I really do believe it. He is one of the best communicators in our party. I am consistently showing clips of him on this channel, and I have one more for you, which I think is incredibly important, calling out the cuts to Medicaid that are in this House GOP budget. Let's take a listen to Jim McGovern right here.
Less than 24 hours later, and here they are on the floor with an emergency censure to soothe Donald Trump's fragile ego. I have never seen them leap into action so fast in my life. It was overnight. Meanwhile, their own voters are getting hurt by this administration, and it's radio silence. They can't even be bothered to lift a finger to do a town hall. Where's the outrage over Trump wanting to cut 80,000 jobs at the Department of Veterans Affairs? Where's the condemnation for Trump firing 6,000 veterans with no justification? Where is the anger for Trump firing scientists who are working to fix the egg shortage by fighting the bird flu? And where's the immediate action when the people who keep Ebola out of the country are fired? Or the people who secure our nuclear weapons? Where is the outrage? Republicans can't lift a finger about any of those things, but they sprint to the floor to censure Al Green because he hurt Trump's feelings. It is pathetic, Mr. Speaker. Now look, we know what this is all about. Republicans don't work for America. They don't work for you. They don't work for veterans. They don't work for the teachers or the nurses or the firefighters or the factory workers or the waitresses or the farmers. They work for Trump. They work for Trump, for their billionaire donors, and for the greedy corporations who write their campaign checks. And if you ever needed proof, look no further than what's happening right now. They are desperate to detract from their own failings, desperate to detract from their betrayal of the middle class, so desperate that they're running from their own voters and censuring people who hurt Trump's feelings.
We can fall into the trap of covering every single topic, covering every single Trump story, and while all our politics feel so nationalized at this point, we also have to point out the hyper-local examples of the people who will be hurt most by Donald Trump's agenda as the wealthiest people in the history of our country, in the world, only get richer. That is what this conversation has to be about. That's the point we got to drive home. We're going to be doing it on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.